The day my dad threw me out was my dead mother's birthday. My father gave me 7 days to leave. I packed my entire childhood into 3 garbage bags. Now he calls me crying. But some doors don't open twice. My name is Riley Morgan, and if you're listening to this, I want you to tell that I was not a bad daughter. I was not a thief. I was not the problem. But on a Tuesday morning in October, my own father looked me in the eyes and gave me 7 days to leave the only house I had ever known. 7 days to pack up 18 years of memories, 7 days to say goodbye to my childhood room with the cracked window pane and the blue curtains my mom sewed before she died. My brother Derek stood behind my father with his arms crossed, already measuring the space for his new home theater. And now, 3 years later, they both come to me crying, begging. But some doors, once you slam them shut, don't open again. Let me start at the beginning, because the beginning is where the poison was poured. I was 17 when my mother, Laura Morgan, lost her battle with cancer. She was the kind of woman who made the whole neighborhood smell like cinnamon apples every fall. She volunteered at the food bank, knew every kid's name on our street, and could fix a broken heart with a single hug. When she died, something inside our house died too. My father, Gary Morgan, didn't just grieve, he fossilized. He sat in his recliner every night, staring at the TV without watching it, and the silence between us grew so thick you could choke on it. I tried everything. I cooked his meals, did the laundry, kept the house spotless. I got straight A's. I never went to parties, never talked back, never asked for anything. But grief turns people into strangers, and my father became a stranger who looked like my dad but had a stranger's cold heart. Derek was 5 years older than me, 22 at the time, and he had always been the golden child. He played football in high school, got a business degree from a state college, and worked as a real estate agent. He had my father's last name stamped on his future. Me? I was just the girl who helped Mom bake cookies, the one who stayed quiet, the one who, after Mom died, became invisible except when someone needed something. And Derek knew how to work that. He visited every Sunday, always bringing our father a six-pack of beer and some story about a new deal he was closing. He'd pat my head like I was a dog and say, "Riley, you're so helpful. What would Dad do without you?" I smiled every time. I hate that I smiled. The house itself was part of the problem. It was a 3-bedroom colonial on Maple Street in a small town called Ashbrook, Ohio. My parents bought it for $120,000 back in the 90s, and by the time I was 17, it was worth nearly $300,000. My mother had put her inheritance from her own mother into the down payment. My father worked as a manager at a local auto parts warehouse. The house was paid off except for a small second mortgage my father took out 2 years before Mom got sick to renovate the kitchen. She never got to see the new granite countertops. She died 3 weeks before they were installed. After Mom passed, the house became a mausoleum. I slept in my room, went to school, came home, studied, cleaned, and slept again. I didn't have a car because my father said we couldn't afford the insurance. I walked everywhere, even in the snow. I didn't complain because I thought if I was good enough, quiet enough, small enough, my father would remember that I was his daughter. He would see me, but he didn't. He saw Derek. And Derek saw dollar signs. It started with little comments. Derek would sit at our kitchen table, flipping through real estate listings on his phone, and say things like, "Dad, you know, this neighborhood is heating up. You could sell this place for a fortune, or you could rent it out. Passive income, Dad, think about it." And my father would nod, his eyes glassy, and say, "Yeah, maybe, someday." Then Derek would glance at me, and I'd see something in his expression. Not guilt, calculation. He was already figuring out how to get me out of the way. I remember one Sunday in particular, about 3 months after Mom died. Derek had brought over a bottle of whiskey, and he and my father were sitting on the back porch. I was inside washing dishes, but the window was open, and I could hear every word. Derek said, "Dad, you can't keep living in the past. This house is full of memories. You need a fresh start. And Riley, she's a reminder of Mom every single day. Don't you think it would be easier for both of you if she went out on her own?" My father didn't answer right away. Then he said, "She's just a kid, Derek." And Derek replied, "She's almost 18, and she's tough. Tougher than you think, she'll be fine." That was the moment I knew. They were already planning. I just didn't want to believe it. The bomb dropped on a Tuesday. I remember because it was October 12th, my mother's birthday. I had baked a small apple pie, her recipe, and set it on the kitchen counter with a single candle. I was going to light it that evening after my father came home from work, just to honor her memory. But my father came home early, and Derek was with him. They walked through the front door at 2 in the afternoon, both of them wearing serious faces. I was in the living room, vacuuming the rug, and I turned off the machine when I saw them. "Riley," my father said, not sweetheart, not honey, just Riley like I was an employee. I stood there, holding the vacuum cord. "Yeah, Dad." Derek sat on the arm of the couch, his arms crossed. My father stood in the middle of the room, his hands in his pockets. He looked at the floor for a long time before he spoke. Then he said, "We need to talk about your future." I thought he was going to talk about college. I had been accepted to the state university with a partial scholarship, and I was working nights at a diner called Millie's to save for the rest. I had $3,000 in a savings account, every penny from tips and birthday money. I was proud of that. I thought he might be proud too. "I've been talking to Derek," my father continued, "and we've made a decision. Derek is going to take over the house. He's going to buy it from me at a fair price, and I'm going to move into a smaller place. It's time for me to downsize." I blinked. "Okay. So where will I go?" The silence that followed was so loud I felt it in my teeth. My father looked at Derek. Derek looked at my father. Then my father said, "You're 18 in 3 months. It's time for you to stand on your own 2 feet. I'm giving you 1 week to pack your things and find somewhere else to live." I thought he was joking. I actually laughed. A small, confused laugh. "Dad, I'm still in high school. I don't have a car. I have $3,000. Where am I supposed to go?" Derek uncrossed his arms and leaned forward. "Riley, don't be dramatic. You have friends. You have that diner job. You can rent a room somewhere. People do it all the time." I looked at my father, searching his face for any sign that this was a test, that he would break into a smile and say, "Gotcha, kiddo." But his face was stone. His eyes were empty. My mother's birthday. He had chosen my mother's birthday to tell me I was no longer wanted in her house. "Dad, please," I whispered. "I'll pay rent. I'll do anything. Just let me finish high school. Please." My father shook his head. "The paperwork is already in motion. Derek is taking possession next month. I need you out by next Tuesday. I'm sorry, Riley, but this is how it has to be." I looked at the apple pie on the counter. The candle was still unlit. My mother's recipe. My mother's house. My mother's daughter being thrown out like last week's trash. And my brother, my own blood, watching with the calm satisfaction of a predator who had just cornered his prey. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't beg again. I just turned off the vacuum, unplugged it, wrapped the cord, and walked upstairs to my room. I closed the door. I sat on my bed. And then I cried. I cried until I had no tears left, and then I cried some more. The pie sat on the counter. No one ate it. No one lit the candle. The next 7 days were a blur of packing and humiliation. I put my clothes into garbage bags because I didn't have suitcases. I wrapped my mother's old jewelry box in a towel and placed it in a cardboard box. I took her photo albums, the ones my father never looked at. I took her cookbook, stained with flour and love. I took nothing else. The furniture was my father's. The TV, the dishes, the towels, all his. I was leaving with 3 garbage bags, 2 cardboard boxes, and my backpack. Derek came by every day to help. His version of help was walking through the house with a notepad, writing down things he wanted to change. "This wall is coming down," he said, tapping the wall between the kitchen and the living room. "Open concept is better for resale value." Resale value? He wasn't even planning to live there. He was going to flip it. My mother's house, the one she loved, the one she planted marigolds in front of, was going to become another soulless flip for a stranger to own. On the 3rd day, I went to my father's room. The door was half open. He was sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at a photo of Mom. I knocked softly. He didn't look up. "Dad," I said, "can we talk, just the 2 of us?" He finally looked at me. For a second, his eyes softened. Then they went hard again. "There's nothing to talk about, Riley. The decision is made." "But why?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Why are you doing this? Mom would never have wanted this." He stood up so fast I stepped back. "Don't you dare tell me what your mother would have wanted. You don't know anything. You were her favorite. You were always her favorite. And when she died, she took everything with her. I have nothing left." Nothing. And I can't look at you every day and see her face. It's killing me." Those words hit me like a punch to the stomach. He wasn't throwing me out because of money. He wasn't throwing me out because Derek convinced him. He was throwing me out because I reminded him of the woman he lost. And instead of holding me closer, he was pushing me away. That hurt more than anything else. More than the 7 days, more than the garbage bags, more than Derek's smirk. My father loved my mother so much that he couldn't love me anymore. I didn't say another word. I turned around and walked out. I closed his door behind me, and I went back to packing. On the 5th day, I asked Derek to stop coming over. He was in the middle of measuring the living room for new flooring. "Derek," I said, "please leave. I don't want you here while I pack." He looked up from his notepad and smiled. That smile, it was the same smile he had when we were kids and he would hide my favorite doll just to watch me cry. "Riley, this is going to be my house soon. I have every right to be here." "It's not your house yet," I said. "And Mom's things are still here. Show some respect." His smile disappeared. "Respect? Mom is dead, Riley. She's not coming back, and the sooner you accept that, the better off you'll be." I wanted to hit him, I really did. But I took a deep breath and said, "Get out, Derek, now." He stared at me for a long moment. Then he laughed, packed up his notepad, and walked out. As he passed me, he whispered, "You'll be back. They always come back." I slammed the door behind him. On the 6th day, I went to see my friend Sarah. She lived 3 blocks away with her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Castillo. They were a warm, loud Mexican-American family who always had music playing and food cooking. I had spent countless afternoons at their house, especially after Mom died. Mrs. Castillo would wrap me in a blanket and feed me tamales and tell me that everything would be okay. That night, I showed up on their doorstep with red eyes and a trembling lip. Sarah opened the door. One look at my face and she pulled me inside. "What happened?" she asked. I told her everything. The 7 days, the garbage bags, Derek's notepad, my father's confession that he couldn't look at me. By the time I finished, I was sobbing. Sarah was crying too. Mrs. Castillo came out of the kitchen, took one look at us and said, "Riley, you are staying here. No arguments, you are family now." I tried to say no. I tried to say I didn't want to be a burden. But Mrs. Castillo put her hands on my shoulders and said, "Your mother was my friend. She would never forgive me if I let you sleep on the street. You will stay in our basement. It's not fancy, but it's dry and warm. And you will finish high school, understood?" I nodded. I couldn't speak. I just hugged her and cried. The 7th day came. I woke up before dawn. I took one last look around my room. The blue curtains, the crack in the window pane, the faded wallpaper with tiny roses. I touched the wall one last time, as if I could absorb the memories into my skin. Then I picked up my garbage bags and my boxes and carried them downstairs. My father was in the kitchen, drinking coffee. He didn't look at me. He just stared out the window at the backyard where Mom's marigolds used to grow. I set my things by the front door. I walked back to the kitchen. I stood there for a full minute, waiting for him to say something, anything, even a goodbye. He didn't, so I said, "Goodbye, Dad." My voice was steady. I was proud of that. He finally turned. His eyes were wet, but he didn't cry. He just nodded. "Take care of yourself, Riley." That was it. That was all he had to give me. 3 words, no hug, no I love you, no I'm sorry, just take care of yourself. As if I were a neighbor moving away, not his daughter being cast out. I walked out the front door. It was raining. Of course it was raining. I stood on the porch for a moment, looking back at the house. The blue curtains my mother sewed were still in my bedroom window. I had left them because I couldn't reach the rod. They would probably end up in a dumpster. I thought about the marigolds. I thought about the apple pie. I thought about the unlit candle. And then I walked to Sarah's house, 3 blocks away in the rain, carrying my life in garbage bags. Sarah's parents had transformed their basement into a small bedroom for me. There was a twin mattress on a metal frame, a wooden desk they had painted white, a lamp, and a small dresser. Mrs. Castillo had put fresh flowers in a mason jar on the desk. They had even hung a small calendar on the wall with a note that said, "One day at a time, Riley." I cried again when I saw it, but this time they were tears of gratitude. I finished my senior year from that basement. I walked to Millie's diner for my shifts, rain or shine. I saved every penny. I applied for every scholarship I could find. I studied late into the night at the desk with the white paint and the mason jar of flowers. And every morning, Mrs. Castillo would knock on the basement door and say, "Breakfast, Mija. You need to eat." She made me eggs and beans and tortillas, and she would sit with me while I ate, telling me stories about her own childhood in Mexico, about leaving everything behind to build a new life. She said, "Riley, the hardest things make the strongest people. You are going to be so strong, stronger than any of them." I held onto those words like a lifeline. Graduation day came. I walked across the stage in my blue cap and gown. I had a 4 GPA. I had been accepted to the state university with a full academic scholarship, plus grants that covered my housing and meals. I had also been offered a work-study job in the accounting office. I had done it all by myself. Sarah's family sat in the audience, cheering louder than anyone. Mrs. Castillo was crying. Mr. Castillo was whistling. Sarah was holding up a sign that said, "That's my best friend." My father was not there. Derek was not there. I didn't expect them to be. But still, when I looked out at the sea of families hugging their graduates, I felt a small, familiar ache in my chest. The ache of being alone in a crowd. I pushed it down. I smiled for Sarah's camera. I hugged Mrs. Castillo, and I moved forward. The summer after graduation, I worked double shifts at Millie's. I saved another $4,000. I bought a used Toyota Corolla, forest green, with a dent in the passenger door. It was mine. I had paid for it with my own money. I remember sitting in the driver's seat for the first time, holding the steering wheel and thinking, I am not nothing. I am someone who can take care of herself. College was hard, harder than I expected. The classes were tough, and the work-study job was exhausting, and there were nights when I sat in my tiny dorm room and wondered if I had made a mistake. But I kept going. I made a few friends. I joined a study group. I went to the library every night. I graduated in 3 years instead of 4 because I took summer classes and overloaded my schedule. I walked across another stage, this time with a degree in accounting. I had a job offer from a mid-size firm in Columbus. I packed my Corolla again, this time with real suitcases, and drove to my new life. I rented a small studio apartment. Murphy bed, parking lot view, noisy neighbors. But it was mine. I decorated it with a few photos of Mom, a print of sunflowers that Sarah gave me, and the mason jar that Mrs. Castillo had put flowers in 3 years earlier. I bought a small potted plant and named it Laura. I talked to it sometimes. I know that sounds silly, but it made me feel like Mom was still with me. Work was good. I was good at accounting. Numbers made sense. They didn't lie. They didn't throw you out on the street. I got promoted. I got a raise. I moved to a nicer apartment with a real bedroom and a balcony. I bought a new car, a Honda Civic, no dents. I started running in the mornings. I joined a book club. I built a life, a real life, and I did it alone. But at night, when the city was quiet and the lights of the parking lot flickered through my blinds, I would think about the house on Maple Street. I would think about the blue curtains. I would think about my father's empty eyes and Derek's smug smile, and I would wonder if they ever thought about me, if they ever regretted what they did. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I was better off, but the wondering never stopped. Then the phone call came. It was a Thursday night, 11 o'clock. I was studying for my CPA exam, a cup of cold coffee next to me. My phone buzzed, unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the part of me that still hoped. "Riley?" The voice was shaky, old, broken. It took me a second to recognize it. My father. I didn't say hello, I just waited. "Riley, it's Dad. I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I need to see you. Please, it's important." I felt nothing. That's a lie. I felt a cold wave of anger so powerful it made my hands shake. "What do you want?" A long pause. Then, Derek lost everything. The housing market crashed. He made some bad investments. He lost his house. He lost his car. He lost his marriage. He's living in my apartment with me now, and we can't afford the rent. We're going to be evicted in 2 weeks. I closed my eyes. I took a breath. And we need your help. Please, Riley. You're our only hope. You have a good job now, I heard. You're doing well. We just need a little money to get back on our feet. A loan. We'll pay you back, I promise. I laughed. I didn't mean to, but it came out anyway. A bitter, hollow laugh. You threw me out with garbage bags on Mom's birthday. You gave me 1 week. 1 week, Dad, I was 17, I was a child, and you chose Derek and his real estate deal over your own daughter. I know, he said, and his voice cracked. I know, Riley, I was wrong, I was so wrong. I was lost after your mother died. I couldn't think straight. Derek convinced me that you would be fine, that you were strong enough. And you were, you are, look at you. You made it, but we didn't. We fell apart without you. Please, just come see us, talk to us, give us a chance to apologize. I looked around my apartment, the framed photo of Mom, the sunflower print, the little potted plant named Laura, the life I built from the ashes of theirs, and I thought about what Mrs. Castillo had said. The hardest things make the strongest people. But strength isn't just about surviving. It's about deciding who you want to be when the people who hurt you come crawling back. I'll think about it, I said, and I hung up. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, and I replayed every moment of those 7 days. The way my father wouldn't look me in the eye. The way Derek smiled when he talked about the open concept. The way my mother's birthday candle sat unlit on the counter, cold and forgot. I thought about the marigolds. I thought about the blue curtains. I thought about the girl who walked out into the rain with garbage bags full of her life. And then I thought about forgiveness. Is it weakness? Is it strength? Is it something you give because the other person deserves it or because you deserve peace? I didn't have the answer, so I decided to go see them. Not to help, not to forgive, just to see. To look them in the eyes and see what 3 years of karma had done. I drove to my father's apartment on a Saturday morning. The complex was called Meadowlark Gardens, which was a cruel joke because there were no meadows, no larks, no gardens. Just gray buildings with peeling paint and broken fences. I parked my Civic next to a dumpster overflowing with trash. I walked up the cracked concrete stairs to apartment 2 billion. I knocked. The door opened. My father stood there and I barely recognized him. He had lost at least 50 pounds. His clothes hung off him like curtains. His face was gaunt, his eyes sunken, his hair completely white. He looked 80 years old, but he was only 56. Behind him, I saw Derek sitting on a stained couch. He was also thin, but in a different way. He looked deflated, like a balloon that had been full of hot air and then popped. His expensive clothes were gone. He wore sweatpants and a faded t-shirt. His hands were shaking. "Riley," my father whispered. He reached out to hug me, but I stepped back. I didn't come for hugs. I walked into the apartment. It was small, maybe 500 square feet. 1 bedroom, a living room, a kitchenette. The air smelled like stale cigarettes and regret. Dishes were piled in the sink. The carpet was stained. This was where my father had ended up after selling my mother's house. This was where the golden boy had landed after all his deals went bad. Derek looked up at me. His eyes were red. He had been crying. "Hey, Riley," he said, and his voice was a whisper. "Thanks for coming." I didn't sit down. I stood in the middle of the room, my arms crossed, and I looked at them. 2 men, my family. And I felt nothing but a cold, hard stone where my heart used to be. "You said you wanted to apologize," I said. "So apologize." My father dropped to his knees. I'm not exaggerating. He actually got down on his knees on that stained carpet and looked up at me with tears streaming down his face. "Riley, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. What I did to you was unforgivable. I know that. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I'm begging you, please, don't let us become homeless. We have nowhere else to go, no one else to turn to, please." Derek stood up slowly. He walked over to me, and for a moment, I thought he was going to try to hug me too, but he stopped a few feet away and just looked at the floor. "I was jealous of you, Riley," he said. "You and Mom were so close. After she died, I thought Dad would finally see me, but he was so lost in his grief that he didn't see either of us. And I hated you for being the one she loved most, so I pushed you out. I convinced Dad that you were a burden. I told him you would be fine, that you didn't need us. I lied. I lied to him and I lied to myself, and I've regretted it every single day." I stared at him. "You regretted it? You regretted it so much that you never called. Never sent a birthday card, never showed up at my graduation. You regretted it from your big house with your fancy car and your perfect life." Derek flinched like I had slapped him. "I was ashamed. I didn't know how to face you. And then the crash happened and I lost everything and I thought, this is karma. This is what I deserve. But Dad is innocent. He was just broken. Please, Riley, don't punish him for my sins." My father was still on his knees. He was crying openly now, his whole body shaking. "I'll do anything, Riley. Anything. I'll work for you. I'll clean your house. I'll be your servant. Just please don't let us freeze on the street." I looked at them. The father who threw me away. The brother who schemed to steal my home. And I felt the anger rising in my chest like a tidal wave. I wanted to scream at them. I wanted to tell them that they deserved every bad thing that had happened to them. I wanted to walk out that door and never look back. But then I thought about my mother again. I thought about the apple pie. I thought about the unlit candle. And I realized that my mother would not want me to become like them. She would not want me to be cold. She would not want me to be cruel. She would want me to be the girl who baked pies for her birthday, the girl who sewed blue curtains, the girl who loved even when love wasn't returned. So I didn't walk out, I didn't scream. I didn't forgive them, not yet, but I did something harder. I knelt down in front of my father. I took his hands. They were cold and bony. I looked into his eyes and I said, "I will pay your rent for 3 months. That's it. In that time, you and Derek will find jobs. You will get back on your feet. And you will never, ever speak to me again unless I call you first. Do you understand?" My father nodded so fast I thought his head might fall off. Derek let out a sob and covered his face with his hands. "Thank you, Riley. Thank you. We don't deserve this." "No," I said, standing up. "You don't. But my mother did, and I'm doing this for her, not for you." I wrote them a check for 3 months' rent. I handed it to my father. He clutched it like a lifeline. Then I walked to the door. I paused with my hand on the knob. I turned back one last time. "You gave me 1 week to leave," I said. "I gave you 3 months. Remember the difference." And I walked out. I got in my car. I drove back to my apartment. And when I got home, I sat on my balcony for a long time, watching the city lights. I thought about the Castillo family. I thought about Sarah. I thought about Mrs. Castillo's tamales and her warm hugs and her words. The hardest things make the strongest people. I didn't feel strong that night. I felt tired. I felt sad. I felt the weight of everything I had carried for 3 years. But I also felt something else. A tiny flicker of something that might have been peace. Not because I had forgiven them, but because I had chosen who I wanted to be. And I had chosen to be the kind of person who helps, even when it hurts. The kind of person who sets boundaries but doesn't close her heart completely. The kind of person my mother would be proud of. The next day, I baked an apple pie. I used Mom's recipe. I lit a candle. And I ate a slice in silence, thinking of her. I wondered what she would say if she could see me now. I think she would smile. I think she would say, "You did good, baby, you did good." 3 months passed. I didn't call my father. He didn't call me. I assumed they had found jobs and were managing. I didn't check. I didn't want to know. I focused on my CPA exam. I passed on the first try. I got another promotion. I moved to a bigger apartment with a view of the river. I adopted a cat from the shelter, a gray tabby I named Marigold. She slept on my lap while I read and purred like a tiny motor. My life was full. Not because I had a lot of things, but because I had built it myself, piece by piece, with my own 2 hands. Then, a letter came. It was in my father's handwriting. I recognized the shaky cursive from the birthday cards he used to sign when I was little. I opened it with trembling fingers. "Dear Riley," it read, "I am proud of you. I always was. I was just too broken to show it. I hope someday you can forgive me. But even if you don't, I will spend the rest of my life trying to be the man you deserved from the start. Derek and I both have jobs now. He is working construction. I am working at a hardware store. It's not much, but it's honest. We are paying our own rent now. We will never forget what you did for us. You saved our lives. Not just with the money, but with the example. You showed us what it means to be strong and kind at the same time. I love you, Riley. I never stopped. I was just too scared to say it. Your father, Gary." I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it and put it in the box with Mom's jewelry and her photo albums. I didn't write back, not because I was angry anymore, but because I had learned something important. Forgiveness is not a door you open once. It is a door you open again and again, every day. And sometimes you need to close it for a while to protect yourself. That doesn't mean you've locked it forever. It just means you're giving yourself time to heal. A year later, I drove back to Ashbrook, not to see my father or Derek, to visit Mom's grave. I hadn't been there since the day we buried her. I parked my car at the cemetery gates and walked through the rows of headstones until I found hers. Laura Morgan, beloved wife and mother. The dates were carved into the gray stone. I knelt down and placed a small bouquet of marigolds on the grass. "Hey, Mom," I said. "I miss you. I hope you're proud of me. I tried to be the person you raised me to be, even when it was hard. Even when I wanted to be mean, I chose kindness. Not for them, for you, and for me." I stayed there for an hour. I told her about college, about my job, about Marigold the cat, about the apple pies I still baked on her birthday. I told her about the Castillo family and how they had saved me. I told her about my father's letter. And when I was done, I wiped my eyes, stood up, and walked back to my car. As I drove out of Ashbrook, I passed by Maple Street. I couldn't help myself. I turned down the road and drove slowly past the old house. It looked different. The blue curtains were gone. The marigolds were gone. The porch had been repainted gray. A family I didn't know was playing in the front yard, a mom and a dad and 2 little girls. They were laughing. The house had a new life. And so did I. I didn't stop. I just drove past, took a deep breath, and smiled. Because I realized something in that moment. Home is not a house. Home is not a street or a town or a set of blue curtains. Home is the place you build inside yourself. The place where you keep the people who love you, the memories that shape you, and the courage to keep going even when everything falls apart. My name is Riley Morgan, and this is my story. But the lesson is not just mine. It is for anyone who has ever been thrown away, forgotten, or told they weren't enough. You are enough. You have always been enough. And the people who couldn't see that, that was their loss, not yours. The hardest things make the strongest people. But strength without kindness is just another kind of broken. So be strong, be kind, set your boundaries, protect your heart, and remember that you are the author of your own life. No one else gets to write your ending. I still bake apple pies on my mother's birthday. I still light a candle. And every year I add a new candle for myself, because I survived, I thrived. And I chose to become the person my mother knew I could be. That is the only revenge worth having. Living well, not to spite them, but to honor yourself.